Beneath the polished stone of modern Rome, below the tourist-laden streets and the chiseled grandeur of cathedrals, lies a silence no guidebook mentions. A silence heavy with ash, blood, and forgotten prayers. Not much survives about them in the records of Rome, and what little remains has been redacted, scorched, or cloaked in euphemism. Not because they were insignificant, but because they were feared, because their faith did not bend before the might of emperors, because their rituals, whatever they truly were, refused to die quietly.
The next mention was scrawled in charcoal on the wall of a collapsed villa near Herculaneum, just before Vesuvius buried the city in fire.
The third, centuries later, in a confiscated letter sealed under the vaults of the Inquisition. But we will come to that in time. Not Christian, not pagan, older than both, whispered only in shadows, buried, not by time but by terror. Centuries later, those sketches would match symbols found etched on obsidian tablets discovered beneath a ruined hill shrine. Tablets later, lost in the Vatican Library. They worshipped in caverns, catacombs, beneath aqueducts, and in burned-out ruins, not because they feared exposure, but because they believed that light was a lie. That truth lived in shadow, in decay, in what the world pretended not to see. The Roman historian Petronius the Elder wrote of a cult who anointed themselves in ash, sang in languages that unmade the mind, and believed that the gods of Olympus were impostors, parasites upon the true divine, sleeper whom they vowed to reawaken through sacrifice and silence. They called themselves the Votari, the devoted, not for desecrating a Roman god, but for attending what the Senate classified as a gathering of dangerous mystics. He was stripped of his rank, paraded through the forum, and condemned to death without trial. The reason? He had renounced Jupiter. And always, after such disappearances, came quiet, an unnatural stillness in homes, neighborhoods, entire quarters. No birds, no laughter, only the smell of burnt myrrh and damp soil. And in his final breath, as recorded by a military scribe, he said not a word of defiance. Only this: our story begins in the year 29 BCE, not in a temple, but in a prison. Lucius Aelius Varro, a minor Roman official, had been arrested for sacrilege. The sleeper stirs beneath the ash. It already infiltrated the underbelly of the city, not as priests, but as gravekeepers, embalmers, sewer workers, and midwives, all professions that dealt with death, passage, and blood. Rome tried to purge them, but every time they cut one branch, another grew. We are only the breath that wakes him. No explanation, no further record. That phrase, the sleeper stirs, appeared only twice more in all surviving Roman archives. Who or what was the sleeper? Not in Rome, but far east, in the scorched plains near Cappadocia, where a detachment of Roman scouts vanished in the year 31 BC.E. The only survivor, a centurion named Publius Carbo, returned weeks later, blind, delirious, and bearing strange tattoos along his arms and neck, symbols not seen in any known pantheon. He claimed he had entered a cavern filled with men and women in black veils, chanting in a language that was older than stars, colder than light. To understand that, we must return to the first known contact between Roman civilization and the Votari. Carbo was executed for madness, but the tattoos, they were preserved, sketched by a curious physician before his death. The Votari never built temples above ground. To Rome, this was sacrilege. To the Votari, this was the only path to awakening. What little we know of their doctrine comes not from their own texts, which were systematically burned, but from the frantic warnings of their enemies. Sacrifice and silence. The phrase returns again and again. They did not preach in forums, did not recruit openly, but people vanished around them. By the time Emperor Augustus learned of them, it was too late. And some branches bore fruit Rome could not explain. It was the year 17 BCE when the marble began to cry. In the district of Aventine, witnesses claimed that the statue of Jupiter, Maximus towering, imperious, carved from white Parian stone, bled from its eyes. Not red, but a dark tar-like ichor. A priest collapsed while scrubbing it. The augurs called it an omen. Widowed, invisible to most until she was caught whispering forbidden prayers to a stillborn child beneath the Temple of Concord. She was brought before the Senate not as a criminal, but as an example. She spoke nothing until the moment before her execution. But the Votari called it a beginning. By morning, 5 temples reported similar phenomena. Icons leaking black fluid, votive fires extinguishing themselves, birds smashing into altars mid-flight. Rome called it blasphemy. It was no coincidence that this plague of signs came days after the arrest of a woman known only as Severa, a midwife. You will hear him when you are silent, and by then, it will be too late. Barbarians, traitors. Even gods with rival temples. It's on the walls, written in soot-dipped fingers. He dreams beneath your empire. But this was a rot within. Her name was removed from all records. But on that night, every statue on the Capitoline Hill was chained. Not for security, for fear. Then she smiled. He was the unformed, the raw silence, the thing that came before the gods themselves. The Votari believed the Olympians were impostors, chained to the surface of a deeper truth. That all of Rome, its order, its conquest, its shining marble, was a delusion draped over a slumbering abyss. And they were the only ones brave enough to peel it back. You have prayed to stone. We have prayed to the wound behind it. Women who memorized forbidden hymns, and in the act of delivering life, whispered death backward into the womb, hoping to reverse the divine sleep. It was not birth they celebrated, but the veil between it and decay. Claimed they were liars. Then wandered the streets screaming. He described an endless plain of bone-colored ash, with a figure kneeling backward beneath the roots of a black tree. Its mouth was sealed, not by force, but by reverence. He claimed it pulsed not with life, but with unlife. A heartbeat made of forgetting, two to the chest, one to the earth. Names struck from census records. Homes burned and salted. Corpses buried upside down in lead boxes filled with soot. No trial. No mourning. The black ichor vanished. Rome returned to its gleam and glory. But beneath the streets, something festered. They did not seek to bring the sleeper into the world. Women carved symbols into the soles of their sandals, so each step would speak to him. Even senators began to murmur. They sought to tear the world open so he could return. Her body was burned. Severa was not just a midwife. She was one of the inner circle of the Votari, known among them as the Ash Mothers. Rome had enemies. The Praetorian Guard began mass arrests. Hundreds vanished into prison caverns, tortured, dismembered. Yet none recanted, none confessed in words, only in gestures. Always the same, 3 fingers to the lips. A scholar named Gaius Aemilius wrote, "They worship not with words, but with absence. Each silence is a psalm, each shadow a gospel." He would later be found dead in his villa, face down in a shallow bowl of soot. But who was he? Ancient graffiti, uncovered near Ostia reads only, "Before Saturn, before fire, before breath." He waited. From the little we know, the sleeper was not a god in the Roman sense. Not a father, not a judge. One man tried. Tertius Balbinus, a disgraced augur, claimed to have seen the sleeper in a vision. He gouged out his own eyes after the vision. To wake him is to end questions. He is not the answer. He is the silence where answers drown. Rome tried to hide this, but rumors spread. Panic infected the slums. Children sang twisted lullabies, and then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. By imperial decree, all known members of the Votari were to be unmade, not executed, erased. And for a time it seemed to work. The bleeding statues ceased. For a shadow does not die when you shut your eyes. It waits for you to blink. Centuries passed. Empires rose, fell, and called themselves eternal. Rome became legend and the whispers faded. But they never truly vanished. It was in the year 642 CE, under the reign of Pope Theodore I, that a vault beneath the Basilica of San Clemente was opened during reconstruction. Hidden beneath layers of brick, ash, and plaster, masons uncovered a chamber untouched since the time of Augustus. Inside, they found no gold, no relics, no scripture, only walls. Walls covered in hand-carved symbols, delicate spirals, rows of inverted eyes, and one phrase, repeated over and over in a script older than Latin. He sketched what he saw and brought the parchment to a Benedictine archivist in Umbria. Within weeks, both men were dead. Leonidas drowned in a baptismal font. The archivist, choked by pages of his own journal. Silence is the final cathedral. The Pope ordered the chamber resealed. The Masons were sworn to silence. But one, a novice named Leonidas, disobeyed. The sketches, however, survived. Centuries later, they would resurface in the personal collection of Cardinal Montefiore, a man obsessed with pre-Christian sex. Instead, they faced east, not toward light, but toward the mouth of an old cistern, believed to be bottomless. Montefiore made a discovery that chilled even his hardened faith. The carvings in the vault matched precisely the tattoos once worn by the centurion Publius Carbo, 700 years earlier. In it, he proposed that the early church, in an attempt to convert pagan masses, had unknowingly adopted fragments of Votari practice. The ash cross on Ash Wednesday, the whispered blessings in Latin, even the idea of resurrection through death, not as salvation, but as rupture. What kind of religion endures not through temples or texts, but through wounds carved into the flesh of the dead? He died shortly after, eyes torn from their sockets, his final words scrawled in blood. Montefiore became obsessed, traced rumors through the Pyrenees, through cryptic footnotes in Arabic alchemical texts, even through fragments in the scrolls of Qumran. He is coming, and he found a name. At its heart, a circular chamber, blackened with soot, lined with thousands of fingertip-sized niches. Inside each niche, a human tooth, perfectly placed, each one engraved with the same spiral symbol seen in Rome. The chamber was resealed. The government declared the site geologically unstable, not Votari, Umbra Sacra, the sacred shadow, a mind cracked by isolation. But then came the ruins in Dacia, a phrase used by Coptic monks to describe heretics in Alexandria, who refused to face the sun while praying. It was in this darkness that Montefiore believed the Votari had endured, not in power, not in structure, but in memory. That each civilization was merely a veil stretched over his breath, temporary, fragile, doomed, like mold that grows not in light, but in what the light forgets. His final work, never published, was a treatise titled Liturgies of the Hollow. He wrote, "The sleeper was not slain, he was swallowed into liturgy, buried beneath hymns, but his breath remains. Each time a choir goes silent, beneath the image, Latin, smeared in soot." After the manuscript was seized by the Inquisition, Montefiore was confined to a monastery in Sardinia. He has no name because names are limits. Modern scholars dismissed it as madness. In 2003, a Romanian archaeologist unearthed a cave system near the Carpathians, as carbon dating placed the site at over 2,000 years old. The team reported strange phenomena: electrical equipment failing, spontaneous nosebleeds, vivid dreams of choking dust and songless choirs. Several left the dig, never spoke again. But whispers spread. One video, grainy, 1 minute long, made it to the surface, showed a fresco, faded, cracked, but clear enough. A robed figure, faceless, pressing a finger to its lips while cradling a city in its other hand. A city burning, its temples collapsing inward. Dormit in civitate vestra. He sleeps in your city. Was it Rome, Constantinople, or everywhere? Because that est what the Votari believed. Not that the sleeper lived beneath one city, but that he was the buried memory of every empire. And so we must ask, if the Votari were mad, why do their echoes remain? Why do their symbols keep reappearing? Why do men still dream of faceless prophets whispering truths too deep to name? Perhaps it is coincidence. Perhaps it is hysteria. Or perhaps it is exactly what they wanted. Because in silence, in forgetting, in ash, he waits. In the winter of 2018, construction began on a luxury hotel project in the heart of Rome. The location was prestigious, just blocks from the Colosseum, and the blueprints promised a spa, a rooftop lounge, and a glass atrium opening into the ancient substructure. But when excavation reached 16 meters below street level, the workers struck something not marked on any archaeological map: a hollow void, a room, and something humming. At first they thought it was machinery, a vibration in the bedrock. But no equipment was present. And the sound, low rhythmic, like a breath held just too long, grew louder the deeper they went. The project was halted. Officials were brought in, cameras prohibited, reports sealed. But one engineer, a woman named Francesca Villani, had already taken photos. Only a single phrase carved into the stone above the threshold, written in reverse, blurry, frantic, lit only by her phone flashlight. The chamber was circular, black walls, no mosaic, no Latin, no crucifix. She flipped the photo. On that single page scrawled over and over, "He who now watches." Villani disappeared 2 weeks later. Her apartment was found empty, save for a notebook, soaked in ash, every page torn out but one. Hundreds. People around the world reporting visions of a figure faceless and vast, cradling cities in its arms, humming in a voice not heard by ears but by bone. Psychologists blamed mass hysteria, a digital age plague of the mind. But the dreams were always the same. The official explanation was foundation instability. The hotel project was quietly abandoned. Superstition, conspiracy, viral hoax. Her conclusion? But then, a priest went missing from San Giovanni, then 2 archivists from the Vatican Library. Then a tour guide who had taken tourists into the catacombs and never returned, as if something beneath language had survived, something beneath us all. Lit, arranged in spirals, burnt into the ground. It's always in silence. Her apartment locked from the inside. It's the only clue. A recording device still running. 4 hours of static. And at the end, a voice whispering in ancient Latin. He is not sleeping anymore. None of this made it into the papers. Those few who whispered of the old cult, of the Votari, of the sacred shadow, of the sleeper, were laughed off. But the disappearances continued. Beneath the streets, in places forgotten even by those who built them, candles began to appear. Then came the dreams. Not 1 or 2. A song with no sound, a temple with no doors, and a god with no name. In 2020, a linguist from Berlin, Dr. Ingrid Merrick, published an anonymous paper comparing phrases found in ancient Roman graffiti, dead Coptic chants, and modern dream journals. They were linguistically identical. Separated by 2,000 years, by oceans, by culture, and yet the rhythm, the syllables, the cadence, perfectly aligned. She called it the substratum pulse, a theoretical undercurrent of belief, not taught but remembered. Not from books, but from bones. She vanished a month later, ecclesia est sinis. The church is ash, and now we return to where we began. Rome, beneath the marble, beneath the noise, beneath the faith of millions. There is silence. A silence that predates Rome, that predates gods. A silence that breathes. Perhaps the Votari were mad. Perhaps they were prophets. Or perhaps they were merely the first to remember something all of us have tried so hard to forget. That every empire is built upon the bones of another. Every prayer is an echo of a deeper one, older, darker, and unanswered. And that even now, even as you watch this, beneath your feet, in the black that sleeps under cities and systems and stories, he waits, not as vengeance, not as mercy, but as the final silence.